Hello and welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, the ultimate resource for HR insights and guidance that will empower both seasoned business professionals and eager job seekers. I'm HR Kyle, your host. I'm excited to embark on this journey with you. In each episode, we'll delve into the intricacies of HR management, uncovering strategies that can transform the way you approach talent acquisition, employee engagement, and workplace dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned HR pro navigating the ever-evolving landscape of human resources or a job seeker striving to land your dream position, this podcast is your compass. Our mission is simple: to provide you with actionable knowledge, expert interviews, and inspiring stories that will help you thrive in the world of HR. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to take your HR game to the next level. Welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, where HR meets success. Welcome to the first episode of the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. And no, my first name is not HR, although sometimes I think my middle name might be HR. But a little bit about me. I've been involved in HR now for 25 years. 20 plus years of that I've been in management roles. And really over that 25-year time, I've held positions in all different facets of human resources. What I've found, though, is my passion is people and organizations and helping them reach their potential. My master's degree is in human resource management and organizational development. I also have a bachelor's degree in psychology as well as an associate degree in business management. And I'm currently in the process of pursuing a master's degree in counseling. And the courses I've taken over the last 25 years really fall into all realms of human resources. But it also includes performance psychology because, again, I love working with people, helping them reach their goals and their full potential. The format of this show will be as follows. Our first segment will always be an HR topic that's relevant to either business leaders or job seekers, or sometimes both. In the second segment, I'll have a guest who has experience in the world of HR as a practitioner or as a job seeker, or possibly both. Again, we're happy that you joined us today, and we think you'll enjoy our podcast. We'll get started after this break. Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business. Welcome back to the HR Kyle podcast. Again, I'm your host, Kyle, and I'm so glad you're here. In this first segment today, we'll be talking about interviewing from a job seeker's perspective. I've got some what I believe to be useful information to you in preparation for that next interview. So let's get started. The first two things that I always talk to job seekers about when they're preparing for interviews is one, help the interviewer imagine you in the job working for their company, right? Secondly, the interviewer should find you likable. So let's talk about those a little bit more. Let's start with the interviewer finding you likable first. This may be to a lot of people an upsetting situation or thought, but I've found in my 25 years of experience this to be true. Remember this, Your impression starts the minute you get out of your car until you drive off. And please don't forget the receptionist when you're coming into the building for your interview. Remember that everyone you meet is important. You really want to focus on your first impressions. Again, this is how you become likable. Make sure you have good, healthy eye contact. Provide a firm handshake. Make sure your posture is upright and slightly leaning into the speaker. Use their name. People like to hear their name. It draws you in. It makes you seem more personable, and it draws a connection between you and the person that you're speaking with. And please express your gratitude to being invited in for an interview and an opportunity to talk about the job. Express excitement and interest in talking them with the interviewer about the role as well as the company. People want to know that you're legitimately interested in being there and working for the company. Remember, much of this, though, doesn't change even if the interview is virtual. And again, these are the ways that you make yourself likable to the interviewer. The second key that I mentioned earlier was help the interviewer imagine you in the job. So how do you do that? First, do your research about the job and the company. For the company, you'll want to check out their website. You'll also look up any news articles. You'll certainly check out their various social media channels. You'll look up financial filings if they're available, as well as online reviews on sites such as Indeed and Glassdoor. Research about the job certainly starts with the job posting. For any job that you apply to, be sure that you keep a copy of the job posting. This will ensure that you have that information if the posting is deleted at any point. You'll also compare your experience in the same or similar role. Again, using the job posting, understanding what the requirements are for the position and what the role looks like, you can do your research to be sure that you understand what's being spoken about. You'll also want to check with your network. See if you know any current or former employees working for that employer. Also, contact members of your network that may be working in the same industry. Although they don't work for that company, they are a competitor, and many times they'll have inside information that not everyone would know. So again, research the company, research the job, and check your network. You can also help the interviewer imagine you in the job by talking in specifics. I know this is a priority for this position, or I know this is a priority for this company. Starting your statements with that begins to help the person imagine you in the role because you already have insight. And again, I've given you information as to how to gather that insight. Give prior examples in your responses to their questions that relate directly to the situation being discussed. For example, you might start out by saying, when I encountered this at XYZ company, I did this. Again, you're relating your past experience to a current situation that they're dealing with. That's helping them imagine you in that job. Also, I find it useful to talk as if you're already there. You might say something like, that's something you and I can work on. Or, this is something I would definitely sit down and meet with you about within the first couple of weeks. Or you might also say, I know this is something we can work on together to show more immediate improvement. Again, using those statements, speaking in the present tense or in the future tense, where you're imagining working with this individual in this role in this company, is helping them imagine you in the job. So after the first impression, so we focused the first few minutes of this discussion on this first impression and just how critical that is. And it reminds me of the old saying, you only get one chance at a first impression. You really do. So make the most of that. But one of the more typical questions you'll get asked in an interview setting is something to the effect of, tell me about yourself. So let's talk through that a little bit because I've seen certain job seekers a little bit misguided in responding to this question. Whenever you're asked to talk about yourself, you certainly want to share your name. Give your full name. That's a reminder to the interviewer as to who you are, and they're also able to attach this information that you're going to provide to your name. So it follows a very linear path. After saying your name, again, your full name, you'll share your education and or training. So any degrees or additional training that you've received, especially as it relates to the job you've applied to. Give a one-sentence summary of your career to this point. And again, especially as it relates to this job. Where are you getting the information about the job? Well, remember that job posting that we talked about earlier that you got the copy of, that you did your research on. This is how you're answering that question. And I always tell job seekers, end with a bang. Tie your intro back to the company and the job, right? So it's something to the effect of, and all of this, Mr. Smith, is why I'm here today to talk about this role with XYZ company. I believe I bring, and then do a quick summary of the key points that you bring that you see listed on the job posting, okay? Practice all of this until you can say it in your sleep. But I always say, make sure you're rehearsed, but not scripted. This entire answer, as far as answering the question, tell me about yourself, shouldn't last any longer than approximately 2 minutes. Quite frankly, if it strays beyond that, you will lose your audience. And stay away from family details. Interviewers are not concerned about your parents, your children, your spouse, anything related to that. Certainly that's about you, but it doesn't relate to you doing this job. Stay away too from hobbies. Unless, and there's one exception that I've come up with, unless this hobby somehow relates to the job that you'll be doing. For example, when I talk to IT candidates, many times their hobby involve information technology and the things that they do on the side when they're not working. That's acceptable. Otherwise, we don't care if you swim, golf, run, whatever it is. Again, it's not relevant to the job. And another no-no that I would stay away from is name dropping. Don't name drop someone that you might know at the company or the CEO or what have you. And the most annoying part of name dropping and why you want to avoid it, so often you're talking to someone who may not even know the person that you're referencing when you name drop. But again, it's not a good way to make a connection to the person sitting in front of you because it's expressing to them that they're not the most important person. Again, the only name dropping you want to be doing is the person that's sitting across from you that you're talking with. Remember this too. When you're talking about yourself in this role and you're describing it, your mantra should be, what should that person know about you to consider you for this job? Ultimately, let your telling about yourself answer that question. So let's talk about the best way to answer the other interview questions. Because certainly you're going to be talking about yourself, but there's going to be other questions as well. They're going to relate to the job and your work style and so on. My experience tells me that there's one primary way that's the best way to answer any interview question, and that is the STAR approach. STAR. Some of you may have heard of this, but I'll go over it anyways. STAR stands for, it's an acronym, situation or task, the action you took, and the result of that action. Again, it's a storytelling mechanism, but it allows you to answer the questions that the interview provides. It's the surest way to prove you know what you're talking about. Give examples of when you've encountered the same or situation or task in the past, whatever that question relates to. And really, this works for any question. And trust me, it makes a big difference because it is proof behind the answer that you've given. I always have a fun example when I'm speaking to job seekers that I use, and I call it the Excel example. And it's where you ask the person, do you know Excel? Or another way to put it is, this job requires you to use Excel, candidate. How would you rate your skill level? And I always give the example of two different candidates. One candidate says, "Oh, I'm really good at Excel, Mr. Smith." That's one possibility. The second possibility sounds like this. "Well, Mr. Smith, in my last role, Excel was especially critical. I had the opportunity to create several databases that allowed me to house information that I could use over and over again. In fact, in those databases, I had links to additional sources, and I kept that updated. And eventually I shared that within my department, and so on and so on." Ask yourself this. Which of those two candidates knows Excel and has proven it? Is it candidate number one who says emphatically, "Yes, I'm really good at Excel," or is it the second candidate who gives you an example or two of when they've used Excel and they talk about their proficiency level? Rhetorical question. We know it's number two. Whenever using the STAR approach, though, please don't forget to hit the R. So many people are very good at describing the situation or task. They're wonderful at talking about the action they took, but then it falls off after that. The R allows you to tie it up nicely. And it's also that bang that we're looking for, because it demonstrates that the action you took was either the correct action or you learned from the action you took. So in other words, the situation I encountered required me to build an Excel database. It was the only way I was going to get this done. So having an intermediate knowledge about Excel, I realized there were some things that I needed to know. So I initially created the database, but I also worked with other members of the organization who are much more proficient at Excel. And I was able to create this database that had all of these different fields and performed all of these different calculations. And here's where the art comes in. And as a result of this, I was able to cut 2 hours of work off each day. I was able to create a system whereby I could reference past data and do some analysis and prepare for the weekly presentation I needed to make. Boom. There's your R. And it demonstrates the action that you took was the correct action and it was extremely effective. But with the STAR approach, don't be afraid of situations where the result wasn't desirable. What do these do? They demonstrate what you've learned and how you would handle differently in the future. So your R becomes that. And Mr. Interviewer, although the result wasn't the one that I was looking for, it did help me become much more proficient in Excel, and it highlighted a couple of areas that I needed to improve on. I've since taken training in those areas, and I'm confident if presented this situation in the future, I'll be much more effective at creating an Excel database that we can use. Again, you've taken a negative situation, you've demonstrated what you've learned from it, and you still have that bang factor with the R. Your questions. Please, first and foremost, have questions. When the interviewer asks you, "Okay, job candidate, what questions do you have for me?" You always want to have questions. Have these questions pre-prepared. And guess where they come from? They come from the research that you've done before the interview. Okay, those are the ones that I was talking about. Make sure they're well thought questions. Here's what I'm talking about there. You want to develop questions that help you receive answers that aid in your decision-making process. So you're looking at things that are important to you. What do you need to know about the job, about the company, about the work environment? That's what should guide your questions. And stay away from the typical, "Tell me about the typical day here." Why? Because no company I've ever worked for and no role I've ever done has had a typical day. Also avoid the question, "What's the culture like?" That seems to be a very popular question, and honestly, it doesn't demonstrate that you've done your research, nor does it really ever give you an answer that's valuable in your decision making. So again, your questions that you ask guide in your decision making. And that is the decision making whether, do I want to take this job? Do I want to work for this company? Because remember, an interview is always two-sided. They may be interviewing you to consider you for the role, but you're also interviewing them to consider whether you want to work there. So let's talk about those two questions that I said are no-nos. Typical day. How about you replace that with, what will be my 2 to 3 top priorities in any given day or week? Again, see how that helps to guide your decision making because it tells you what you'll be working on. Question number 2 that I said was a no-no, the culture question. What if you replace that with, What do you hear from employees about what they like about working here? Wow. The answers you're going to be receiving there should be the type of answers that you've given earlier. In other words, they have proof behind them. The interviewer should always be able to provide examples. And that provides insight into the validity of their answer. For example, if they can't tell you what the priorities are for this job, I would be concerned that you're walking into a situation that's chaotic and involves a lot of firefighting. If they don't know what their employees are saying about their culture, I'd have to wonder, do they really care what their employees think? Are employees not happy there and they just don't want to tell me? Or maybe the culture is just not something that's important to them. Either way, the answer that you receive, whether you receive an answer or not, certainly answers the question. So here's the $1 million question. I talk to job seekers about this all the time. There's one question that when you're wrapping up that interview, please make sure you ask. And here it is. Is there anything in my background or that we talked about today that would make you hesitate to consider me further for this position? And then you know what you do? Wait for their answer. Let that person think. We want them to think. Hopefully they're already thinking about whether they want to proceed with your candidacy or not. Two things are going to happen with that question. They're going to lie to you in their response, or they're going to tell you the truth. Quite frankly, if they lie, you have to ask yourself, do I really want to work there? So let's say they tell you the truth. And the truth is nothing, okay? They can't think of any reason not to consider you further. Here's what you say next. Great to hear that, Mr. Smith, because I'm very interested. What are the next steps in this process? And again, let them provide you that answer, because the next step should involve you being made an offer, further being considered, additional interviews, and so on. So again, you're getting a feel for what's happening next. So let's say the other option is they say your experience is lacking, or in some way, shape, or form they say that. Point to specific examples of where it is not lacking, or how you make up for that lacking. Give prior examples that address you filling the gaps. But whatever you do, please do not just say, I'm a quick learner, so I'm sure I can acquire that skill quickly. If it were that easy, they wouldn't have brought it up as a hesitation. So again, whatever they say is lacking, you go back to the things you talked about, you go back to your history, your work history, and you point to those as ways that you will make up for that and how you will approach that. Be sure, though, by the end of this interview, you have to find out what are the next steps, including the timeline, because you want to know that. You may have other interviews, or quite frankly, your heart's really set on this one, and you don't have to wait very long to find out what's going on next. Either way, find out what the next steps are and how long that's going to take. And whatever you do, we know how we started strong, right? With that first impression. Please, let's have a strong ending. You shake hands with the interviewer. You use their name. You say thank you. If you want the job, tell the interviewer, I really liked everything I've heard today and would love to be considered further. And please, be friendly as you depart to everyone. Here's a little tidbit in my role. For every receptionist I've ever worked with, before or after the interview, or I've asked them how the candidate treated them. That provides some really strong insight into how that person will conduct themselves as an employee of that company. So there you have it. There are my tips on preparing for that first interview. Next time, we're going to delve into the topic of interviewing even further. And I'll be providing additional information and things for you to think about so you can ace that next interview. For now, let's take a quick break. You'll learn a little bit more about hrkyle.com and the service. Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business. I have to admit, welcome back, by the way. Happy to have you back at the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. And again, I started to say, I have to admit, this is the section of the show that I'm most excited about, where we have a guest come in, either an HR practitioner or someone close to the HR profession, possibly even a job seeker, where we can interview them, talk to them about their experience, and share that with this audience. Because I think we'll find that the experiences that are shared from our guests, many of us can relate to it in some way, shape, or form. And I hope you find this useful to you in either your job search or in your professional work as well. Today, I'm very happy to welcome our first guest to this episode. This is a young lady that I met earlier this year, performing some mock interviews with a university here in the state of Ohio. And I got to be honest with you, one of the more impressive young candidates that I've ever spoken with and had the opportunity to talk with. And I'm the kind of person that when I meet impressive people, I tend to really work hard to stay in contact with them. And my guest here today, Leanne, she definitely falls into that category. We've known each other now coming up on, I think, about 8 months. And we've stayed in regular contact. Many times I like to think of my role with Leanne as more of a mentor and coach. But again, was very impressed the first time that we talked. And since then, we've really worked to develop a good, strong professional relationship. And I always say to Leanne, if I could hire you, I would in a second. So Leanne, welcome to the HR Kyle podcast.
Thank you, Kyle, so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Again, thank you for agreeing to join us today.
Yeah, of course.
Before we get started, let's take a couple of minutes here and just have you introduce yourself and let our audience know a little bit about you, who you are, and what you're up to.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanna. I'm from Northeast Ohio. I recently graduated college in most recent May. I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology with a minor in entrepreneurship. And I picked those two because, like Kyle, I love talking to people, getting to know them, and continuing to educate myself on the ever-evolving mind, and accompanied with entrepreneurship because I've felt to be a natural leader. I like to take charge. I like to collaborate and get to know other people. Currently, I am a server at a restaurant in downtown Cleveland. It's called Gabriel's Southern Table and Whiskey, and it's more of a something that I do still have to make money as I'm young, but it does supplement my passion of getting to know people and get paid for it.
Wonderful. Leanna, thank you so much for introducing yourself and letting us know a little bit about who you are and to set up the rest of the segment as far as these questions. So, Leanna, you have a unique perspective that I think you bring to this conversation in that you just graduated in May. And tell us a little bit about what happened after you graduated in May, because it's a little bit of a roller coaster there, right?
Yes. So I just came back from Birthright, a trip to Israel, and I started my first full-time salaried benefit whole shebang job, and I was really excited. But unfortunately, it wasn't the most, it was a chaotic experience, but I learned so much of it and I wouldn't change a thing.
But it was a little bumpy for you, wasn't it?
It was a little bumpy, but luckily it did turn out in positively for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That was something that stuck out to me in our conversations, especially over the last couple of months. You took a situation that anyone else could have, one, been defeated by, but certainly two, not taking any lessons from, and you really turned it into a positive. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you were able to do there to take I guess to take lemons and make lemonade?
Absolutely. So I was super excited about the job, and I think that was um, kind of a double-edged sword for me. I think I was so excited that I didn't pay as much attention to what I should have when I initially started the process. I think maybe a lot of other college graduates could agree. We have that, oh, the new mountaintop after graduating, the next goal, oh, salaried job, security. And sometimes we miss important things along the way. And I unfortunately did. And the job was not a good fit for me. The company culture was not a good fit for me either. And unfortunately, um, they let me go for um, very vague and undisclosed reasons that just didn't add up, and quite frankly left me very confused and bemused. Yes, I was in the dumps a little. I was pretty sad. I was like, I took it very personally. I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? How could I have been better? How did I not see this coming? In a way, I did see it coming, because I got very nervous, but there were, I had to remain confident in myself and my skills. And a lot of the aftermath kind of confirmed, um, the initial thoughts that I should have paid attention to in the beginning. And, I took some time, but I was like, a lot of the things pointed to, it really depends on the person and how they handle it. I decided to say, I can't let this bring me down. I'm still very young. I still have a whole lot of life to live, and I can't be sad that one company didn't want me.
Lana, there's so much to take away from your story, and I'm sure many people that are listening here, regardless of where they are in their careers, whether they're early career, middle, or late, have had the same or similar experiences. And that's something you and I talked about as well, is that your reaction to that situation was very common, and it really didn't matter your age or where you were in your career to have that type of reaction. But what I liked is you took a lot of valuable information from this. And if you want to find a silver lining here in this dark cloud, it was that. It helped you reorient a little bit and say, what are my priorities? What are the things that are important to me when I look at my next job and when I consider the company I work for? Because again, many times we get hung up on the job and the things that are important there, but we lose sight that that job still occurs or exists within the larger form known as a company. So not only does the job
Exactly.
have to be a match, but the culture has to be a match, right? Tell us a little bit more about that, because you did a lot of soul searching there.
I did. I did learn a lot. I learned that a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a lot more important to me than I thought it would be. Um, I went, I was in a company, I'm a colored woman, colored and female, in a building of mostly men and mostly white men at that. And they, it was an unspoken kind of culture, kind of fraternity like, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I never felt like I truly belonged there. And I kept pushing those thoughts away because I just kept thinking, I have to do a good job. I have to prove myself, and I have to just, I guess, bend over backwards just to prove to some people that I am worth something at this
Mhm.
company.
Right. No, very valid points. So again, the soul searching led you to understand, hey, these are things that are important to me. And you mentioned DEI, but the biggest word there that you shared is belonging. And this is something that I was talking about in the first segment. When you're interviewing at a company, you're interviewing them as well. And we really need to be alert as job candidates, and this is all of us, to how we're treated. Do we feel welcome there? Does it feel friendly? What are those interactions looking like? So again, on the job seeker side, you're the consumer. You're looking at that situation to say, am I going to be comfortable here? And again, although for Leanna, the lesson was difficult, it's probably a good thing that it happened earlier in your career rather than a little later on, because again, you didn't
Exactly.
lose focus, right?
Nope. I got right back onto the job wagon, but I'm doing it with more, um, a little more patience. I'm positioning myself to where I can look for something that I'm a mission or a vision or a company that I'm truly passionate about. On the flip side, I actually did have meet with an interviewer who I had a wonderful experience with, but I didn't take the job because the position wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, but I had a
And it's okay to say
wonderful
no.
interaction. It is
And it's
okay to
okay.
say no.
Right? Right?
I didn't feel
Exactly.
bad about it, but I did have a wonderful interaction. She was very friendly. She was very honest. She made me feel very comfortable very quickly. And I even acknowledged that to her. I said, I have never felt so comfortable in an interviewing process. And my interview ended up being like an hour and a half. And, um, even though I didn't take it, I was very thankful for that positive experience.
Yeah. And it lets you know that those experiences are out there and you need to stay persistent. Again, those are lessons too that we're passing on to our audience here today. The experience that Leanna had is not that uncommon, but notice how she took the positives from it. She took it as a learning experience. It forced her to take a step back, as I recommend all job seekers to do, and list those things that are priorities to you and also give them weight, because you may have a list of 5 things, but the top 2 represent 50% of the actual weight or how important it is to you. Lena, let's wrap up today's segment with this question to you. What are some things that you would share with others to think about in their job search, especially if they're fresh out of college? And maybe it's 1 or 2 things that you would share.
Absolutely. I would rem- remember your value. Just because you're young and fresh into the field, it doesn't mean that that companies and corporations can say, okay, well, now you're corporate roadkill. I can do whatever I want to you just to gain some experience, or say, hey, I've been with this company for 5 years, but I suffered mentally for it. It's worth taking the time to find what you like or even find what you love. And it's okay if you make a mistake and you don't actually love it.
That's very good. Lena, fantastic advice. Thank you for sharing that. As I kick this
Thanks so
segment
much for
off,
having me.
you're very welcome. As I kick this off today, I always tell Leanna, if I had a position, I would hire you. I don't, but guess what? Somebody in our audience may have a position that you'd be a good fit for. They might want to talk with you. The best way to
Yes,
get in
thank
touch
you.
with Leanna is work through me. Leanna, anything that you want to share about your current job search?
I am very open-minded. I definitely want to work with people. I am resilient through tough situations, and I have a contagious energy that I would love to share with my new team.
Very true. I'm going to add one more thing. This lady is really smart and thinks on her feet extremely well. So
Thank you,
that's the end of
Kyle.
you are very welcome, Lena. So good to have you on here today and talk with you in this forum. Appreciate you being our first guest. Again, audience, if you want to reach out and learn a little bit more about Leanna and possibly get in contact with her, feel free to reach out through me. Again, happy to have her on today. Happy to get this first episode of the HR podcast under our belt.
Woohoo!
Really had a good time with this. And thank you so much, Leanna. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank
Everyone else out
you.
there, you're very welcome. And well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the HR Kyle podcast. We hope you found our discussion valuable and filled with insights that you can apply in your professional journey. Whether you're a business leader aiming to foster a thriving workplace or a job seeker looking to carve out your own path, remember that HR Kyle is the compass that can guide you towards success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. We're committed to being your trusted source for HR wisdom, and we look forward to having you back with us for our next episode. Remember, in the world of HR and professional growth, there's always room for progress. Be sure to visit our website at hrkyle.com. That's hrkyle.com to learn more about how we can help you meet your business and professional goals. So until next time, this is HR Kyle signing off. Stay motivated, stay informed, and keep reaching for those career goals. Music provided by bensound.com. That's bensound.com.